So, Don, I just wanted to thank you for kind of getting together with us today. I'm looking forward to having a great conversation around, the true intricacies and insights of, what successful branding looks like for organizations. But before we get there, why don't you just give us a little bit more background about yourself, your experience, and then let's jump in.
Yeah, well, first of all, how wild, coming full circle, right? In so many ways, having you as a student years ago, and I told you this at the time, you were a standout student. And one of my favorite parts of teaching, I've been teaching at the University of Wisconsin almost 25 years now, is getting to stay in contact with students who are just not only good students, but good people, and seeing their career trajectories, which is awesome. So it's like, a huge honor and just great fun for me to be here. And yeah, so I kind of came to marketing and branding kicking and screaming. I am kind of non-traditional in that sense. I felt like marketing and branding was about manipulation. It was about putting forth false fronts. And I had some life stuff happen, some career stuff happen, and actually really started seeing that good authentic communications, which includes the branding, marketing, advertising, really is the essence of good connection and good communication. So I got lucky, went back to school and got an opportunity to teach at the school where I was going, so UW-Madison. And then during my graduate program, I wanted to practice what I was learning. And so I started volunteering for some nonprofits and helping with marketing, and it turned into side consulting work that grew into the business that I've had for 25 years. So I try to keep a foot in both worlds. And I think it's really important to do that, to have the practical application as an entrepreneur, but then also have the academic perspective to make sure things are informed in some way. And then for me, a lot of what I love to do is I love to work with and coach my clients. So teaching at the university gives me that opportunity to practice my teaching skills and communication skills in that sense. So
No, absolutely. I think that actually leads to a perfect segue. You mentioned you've got a foot in both worlds. And so I think one of the major concerns, especially of any student kind of going into a program like the one that you're a part of at UW, is certainly revolves around the hesitation of the question of, am I learning something that's actually going to be applicable? Or is this something that's been in a textbook for the last 25 years? And, the market has changed so drastically that I'm not going to be able to recognize what that looks like. And so, kind of given your position, I figured it'd be great to kind of start from, fundamental principles, right? And like from a branding perspective, what are some of those principles that either remain consistent regardless of market change, or on the opposite, right? Like the market certainly dictates that you have to evolve and kind of adapt to your approach when it comes to working with organizations of any size.
when people will ask, what's new, what's happening, this new social media platform is out, or this new technology is out for online advertising. What's coming up next? What's coming up
Right.
next? And you can go back, look this up on YouTube, but Jeff Bezos was asked this question when somebody said, what's up next? What's happening for Amazon and the future of Amazon? And he said, that's a really interesting question. And it's a good question to ask. What's new? Where are things going? Where are they trending? But I would submit there's a more important question to ask. And that more important question to ask is, what's not going to change in 5 years? What's not going to change in 10 years? And he said, people are not going to say, hey, I want to pay more money. I want slower delivery. I want less options. So what we need to look for in the marketing and branding world, the way you set up that question, I love it, is the principles that do not change. How we might execute might change. There might be a new platform that doesn't exist right now or whatever. But what do people want? What people want is they want to have some level of trust and connection with the companies, organizations, and brands they interact with. So how do you do that? It's the way you always have done it. Whether you go back to the medieval marketplace, you do that by being who you say you are, providing the service that people want and expect, and taking care of your people internally and your customers. So don't pretend you're something and say something you're not. So that means you have to know who you are and who you serve. You can't be all things to all people. So figuring out who we are, How do we serve them, and doing the best we can to build and foster a relationship and connection to foster trust. And in this day and age, this is the same as the medieval marketplace as well. And that's kind of where marketing and branding started, is if I take care of you 300, 400 years ago, 500 years ago in the medieval marketplace, and a friend says, hey, where should I go buy something? What's going to happen? You're going to say, go check out this Don guy.
Right.
So it's word of mouth, right? And that's one of the things that slipped by when we went to mass communication for the last 100 years, was that it became big advertising. Well, if we slice back and I take care of you today, what are you going to do? You go on the socials and you share out, hey, this company did a great job taking care of me. If you're looking for something in this field, this is the company, or this is the guy, or whatever, that's going to take care of you. It's that back to that word of mouth, where the customer has the control of being able to say what their interactions and experiences are like about brand. And there's all kinds of data in terms of word of mouth sharing and the impact that has on purchase decisions. That's, not surprising when you take a step back and look at it. So really, that's what a lot of branding comes down to. Who are you? What do you stand for? How do you take care of people? And how do you build and foster that trust so that your customers become a big part of your marketing arm? I always say that the best sales force in the world is a satisfied customer who wants to brag you up.
And I could not agree with you more, Don. In fact, and it brings up another good question, because I think a lot of times folks kind of look at these heavy distinctions between, B2C versus B2B. And they think, especially in the B2B world, like, oh, well, you're talking to businesses, and therefore, you have to change your approach and essentially, tighten up the tie a little bit, sit up a little bit straighter, be a little bit formalized. And yes, like, there's definitely a need for that to a certain extent. But I love your point about, be who you say you are and who you really are. And so in the same sense, how do brands, especially in today's day and age, kind of compete for attention of audiences, while at the same time kind of maintaining that, that self-identity, which, and again, as you think about specifically from a branding perspective, when is the right time to start considering, is it time for a brand refresh? Is it time for a rebrand kind of overhaul, and what that looks like for, especially businesses in that B2B world?
Sure. Well, I always say this, whether it's B2B, B2C, B2G, business to government, it all comes down to P2P, people to people. There's people on the end of a business to business, and what all humans seek out similar things. We want to feel like we're taken care of. We want to feel like people care. We want to feel like we're heard. And that's how you stand out. So, there's changes, of course, going on now with Chat GPT and AI type tools becoming part of search. But the thing I like to point out is that last year, when Google did a refresh of how their search algorithm works, they started putting more and more an emphasis on what are the questions that customers or searchers are asking, and what websites show the most understanding of those questions and the best answers. So what do? You have to know what your customers want, and you have to think of it this way. I use this quote as well. I use it as a quiz question. And I ask my audiences a lot of times, stop and think about this. Imagine everybody in your life lives by this philosophy. Tell me if your life would be enhanced or not. And the philosophy is this: if you wish to understand me, you must think my thoughts, you must speak my words, and you must feel my feelings. Nobody gets that. And the point of that is, like, if somebody is speaking your language, if somebody can understand what the day-to-day struggles are, and we all have struggles, and they speak to you in a way that, hey, they get me. They're using the language. They understand the business challenges I have, or the individual life challenges I have. That company or that individual is doing those things. It fosters and builds connection. And the reason I love using that quote is that's principle based, again, like what we were talking about before. What's new? What's new? What's new? That quote's over 2,000 years old. That's not new, but people forget it. They forget. If you use the language, think about, get rid of the jargon, get rid of the BS. What are the worries, fears, and concerns that your customers have, whether it's B2B, B2C? What are the pressures they have, and what are the phrases they're using? Sometimes jargon makes sense, because in the B2B world, if I start talking about, hey, I can help you with your SERPs, and I can help you with KPIs and your conversion, your CRO, your conversion rate optimization, people in the business to business world might be like, this guy knows what he's talking about. But if I go to somebody who has no idea what those things are, like, hey, we'll help you with your SERPs and your CTAs so that your CROs go up, people are like, I just want my website and social media to work and generate more business for me.
Right.
I said that, but not in a way that makes sense to you. And so the idea with that brand is being able to understand the language, the worries, fears, concerns, the feelings and stresses that your customers have, and then speak to that in a way of not saying, I don't care about your features and benefits. What I care about is, do you understand me, and can you help me solve my problem?
Bingo. And
And
again, like that actually harps on something that I just recently talked about too. And that's, no one is ever going to care nearly as much as you do about what you offer or what you produce. It's just, it's the nature of the game, right? But it leads into a really good question. Just, when you look at how do you fuel your brand, a big piece of that, to your point, is really addressing kind of those challenges, fears, and just underlying concerns.
yes.
Speaking their language, but at the same time, I think you have to kind of bring it all together into a cohesive story, right? And like, another quote that's really resonated with me is, and I think Maya Angelou, coined this, or she might have taken it from somebody else. She's who I remember, and saying, it's not about what I say to you or what I convey to you, it's how I made you feel. And so in the same sense, as we're looking specifically at branding, how can we measure kind of the sentiment or just overall, major characteristics that you want to keep an eye on and focus on from a performance perspective to ensure that your brand is, one, aligned with, your organization, but then even more so is aligned with your audience that you've built?
That's a great question. So the way I do it is, all of us have people in our customer base who are influential, meaning, and they might only influence 100 people, but their word of mouth sharing about you is way more powerful than you messaging a random 1 million people. And so the point of that is that what I look for is, I work to identify who those people are. Who are people who are active on the socials, for example, since word of mouth on the socials are things that I can track. And what are they saying about me and my company? Are they people who are giving positive feedback, not just in an Amazon review or a Google review or something like that, but they're talking about, and because they're producing content, they're a thought leader or an opinion leader. But those people are saying things that highlight my company in a way that, or talk about my company in a way that 1 million of my sales calls couldn't do, because it is seen as an unbiased word of mouth referral. And so the idea with that is thinking about, okay, who are those folks and how can I engage with them? And there's lots of different examples in terms of what you can do and how you can do it to start to see, are there ways to engage? It can be something as simple as sending them a handwritten note card of, hey, just really appreciate having you as a customer. We really like having folks like you in our community, and we're grateful for you. It could be something more extensive, but the idea is, as you said, Maya Angelou said, people won't remember what you said or what you did. They'll remember how you made them feel. And if you say, I recognize you and I see you and I appreciate having you as a customer, what happens? I light up. I have yet to meet somebody in our society today that feels overappreciated. I mean, it's a sad reality, right? There's all kinds of data on this. There's loneliness epidemics, all different kinds of things. And so what businesses and brands can be is, they can be connection points to those types of people who then, what do? They talk you up. And so then I look at, that's part of the sentiment analysis I look at is, are the key players talking about me in a positive light, talking about my product in a positive light? And can I do little things? And I've got case study after case study of examples that are really simple to do. We're doing a simple outreach. I mean, one of my favorite examples is Chewy, the pet company.
Sure.
And Chewy does an amazing job. People are very passionate about their pets. And you're thinking, oh, I'm just selling subscriptions to dog foods and treat. What do they do when when they find out that somebody's pet died? What they do is if they have sent something, they say, please let us know, or they'll send a note saying, we are really sorry. We heard that, your dog, your cat passed away. The food that we sent you, please pass it on to a shelter in honor of your dog or your cat or whatever. And that is something that people brag up all the time. They send birthday cards for your pet, little teeny things like that. And yet, is there a cost associated with that? Yes.
Oh, sure.
But is there a customer built because of that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it becomes almost like your borderline cult, right? Like not quite a cult, but to your point, you kind of continuously engage with your audience. You find ways to serve them and delight them and make it so that it's that much harder to leave, right? It's a stickier relationship over time. And now, on the flip side, one question that I have is, it seems like, these types of things are not necessarily, what's the word? They're not directly dependent on scale. And what I mean by that is like, you kind of give examples of like big brands like Amazon or Apple or, Chewy for that matter. And for some, it's probably really daunting to look at and go, well, those are like global multinational corporations that, they've got multi-million-dollar budgets and huge teams. But, I also think about like, if you're, and where I'm going with this is, if you're a newcomer or a brand into a space where there's a very, saturated or, well-established incumbent, like what are some of the opportunities that are available to you as kind of the up and coming brand that you can compete, in order to kind of gain that market share?
Great question. So what I do is I set up listing posts, and the listing posts are, I'm going to work, and this is a moving target, by the way. So it isn't like I'm going to identify 10 targets in a community that I want to connect with, and those 10 targets stay permanent. But let's say, for example, I'm getting started in a new space, and let's pick marketing. And I want to help small businesses in the Madison, Wisconsin area who might be struggling with different marketing challenges. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go on LinkedIn or another social network, and I'm going to try to identify businesses that would be good fits for me, and I would be good fits for them. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to see who is active, asking questions, posting concerns, challenges that they have. And I'm going to jump in and I'm going to start answering them. Or I'm going to provide helpful insights. Hey, Joe, I saw that you posted a question about what are some top things to do. I don't know if you ever saw HubSpot, but they've got a really good blog with some free resources that might help you out. And what happens? Who the heck is this Don guy? And why is he recommending or referencing something that's free? And he's not getting
not even his.
He's not selling me anything, right? And so what ends up happening is this is a Gary Vaynerchuk thing. I start to put in social credit. I start to develop credit of, I'm not pushing anything. I'm just looking to be helpful because that's part of my personality and my brand. And that's what people want. They don't want to be sold to. They want to be helped, right? So I'm going to go in and I'm going to make these little deposits. And what's going to start to happen is people will start to say, who is this Don guy? And I'm going to go check out, what he's doing. And then I might post something like, hey, I saw that Joe McNamara of this company in Madison recently asked a question about what are the best local companies to do X, Y, and Z with. And so I put together this little list to share, not just with him, but with anybody else in the Madison area who might be looking for XYZ, or what are the 3 things that I should do? Because as a new restaurant in Madison, Joe's restaurant struggling with some common things that a lot of restaurants do. So here's the things I recommend, and maybe here's a podcast or a book to check out. That isn't me. And part of the reason I do that is because now there's no agenda, right? There's no agenda. It's like, this dude's being helpful for what? And at first people are going to be skeptical because naturally we're skeptical. But then I do that enough and they're like, okay, I'm skeptical because I've had the wool pulled over my eyes where people are just being nice to sell me. This guy just keeps helping me. Wait a second.
And a good point too to call out is I wholeheartedly agree. I think at the core of what you do has to be customer centric, right? And like figuring out how do you provide that value, regardless of where that value stems from. But I would also, and I don't know if it's a direct argument, but I would also say, it's okay, as you're continuing to kind of build your brand, to figure out, how can I answer these questions myself, right? And how can I produce, the thought leadership and kind of the value add of my own content so that, in the case that I have that opportunity, it's not an either or, to your point. Like, I'm going to prioritize my article over what HubSpot said, or maybe what Gary Vee is saying. But instead, it's more of a collective approach where, hey, look, like, I know what I'm talking about, but it's not just me, right? Like, here's some other really helpful resources that might actually be more helpful and more value driven to you than what I can provide. But ultimately, I'm here to try and kind of be that customer centric Sherpa. And like the example that one of my old employees gave was, when we look at the customer journey, and I know we're kind of getting off topic, but when I look at the customer journey, it's less about getting you from point A to point B as it is about ensuring that your journey is successful, that you experience something that's valuable and positive. And at the end of that kind of experience, that we've got a really good fit. Either we're going to move forward together, or, at the very least, you're going to kind of walk away with the information that you needed to make a sound decision. Like similar, like a Sherpa that would kind of take you up the mountain. You can go it alone. But did you know about that to sidestep that booby trap, right? Or
exactly. Well, I think to your point too, for somebody who's starting new, you need to, at the same time you're doing what I'm recommending, be building your own content base. 100% what you said. So if you're far enough along and you have a lot of your own content, say, hey, I wrote an article on this. Here's also a couple other resources you might find valuable. But so do promote your own stuff. But if you don't have anything yet, that's where initially just start out by sharing other people's stuff and collect those questions. Collect the questions. And then
in my case, go to the experts that know this, right? Like, it's not by chance that Don Stanley's sitting here on a video with me, right?
Oh, that's exactly right. Because then what I am is I'm the curator of all the stuff that's out there to help you out. I don't have to be the know-it-all, be-it-all, because things change way too fast to know everything and to keep up with everything. But I know the resources to check out. I'm going to go ahead, and my job as a marketing business is to scout out what the best options are, figure them out, come back to you so you don't have to waste your time and energy doing that. I'm the Sherpa who's picked the right equipment for this particular climb, right?
Exactly.
You is different than Mount Everest, which is different than Rainier, which is, so I need to know that. You can go on and figure it out yourself, but you're going to spend a lot of time and energy where I've done that already for you. Right. So that's the idea, is to be thoughtful about it. But one of the things that I always talk about, my favorite business movie scene of all time, to tie this in, is from A Miracle on 34th Street. And in A Miracle on 34th Street, there's this famous scene that Santa has this mom come, sits on his lap. Mom puts his son on the lap, and the son says, I want this fire truck for Christmas. I want this fire truck for Christmas. And Santa says, oh, we can get you that fire truck for Christmas, blah, blah, blah. So the little boy leaves, and the mom comes up to Santa and says, how could you do that? You guys don't have that. I looked around your store and you don't have that. He said, well, we don't have it, but Acme Toys down the road does have it. And she's like, what? You're sending me to a competitor? What? He goes, I just want you to be happy. I want your son to get what he, and what
Well,
ends
and
up,
didn't that happen in real life? Wasn't that
yeah,
Macy's that did that?
yeah, yeah. And so what ends up happening is the manager overhears the Santa say that, the manager of the store, he gets mad at the Santa, like, why are you steering customers to our competitor? And suddenly all these letters start flooding in from these moms of saying, hey, we heard you guys recommended, because moms, like mommy bloggers or influencers, this woman tells the story. And we heard that you guys are sending people to your competitors to make sure kids get the gifts that they want. We're going to buy as much as we can from your store because you're the only one who looked out for us, not looked out for just the sale. And then their sales go through the roof. And some people might say, well, that's a cute story, but time and time, Marcus Sheridan, our mutual buddy, talks about that, where he's highlighted competitors in the swimming pool industry and said, go to these people. And then people did a search and said, we're going to make sure your competitors are good, but you're talking good about your competitors? You're recommending we check? No, we're going to check out you, and ended up getting sales of, in-ground swimming pools aren't cheap, significant sales because he wasn't putting anybody down. And people, that's refreshing to people when they're like, and this is like a marketing tip 101, do it in a genuine way, but say, we're not sure you're the right fit for us and we're the right fit for you. So let's just have a conversation to make sure. And you can do this in a blog post. You can do it one-on-one. But when you tell people, yeah, I'm not sure we're the right fit for you, they're like, wait a second, what? Every company tries to sell me and says I'm the right fit. You're actually going out of your way to say you're being picky about me? And ironically, what ends up happening is those companies, those individuals want to do business with you when you tell them, yeah, I'm not quite sure you're the right fit. And it's not a manipulation technique. It's a technique that says, we're really looking out. We want success stories with all our customers. That's our brand. You aren't a good fit for us, so we can't work with you.
Right.
And Pete, it's
But
so
it doesn't mean we
refreshing.
can't help you. Because I think
Yeah.
that's the big
Yes.
one, right? Is because there's plenty of stories that I've heard where it's like, oh, well, that guy wasn't a good fit, and we let him know, and then we sent him on his way. And if that's where the conversation ends, I think you're doing yourself and certainly your brand a huge disservice, because you
Yes.
didn't provide the end value to that customer or the potential customer in a way that you would hope that somebody would do for you.
Exactly. And if your brand is about being helpful first, which I argue every brand should be, that means when somebody isn't a good fit, you steer them in a better direction.
That's right. No,
Hey, you're a
absolutely.
recreational mountain climber. We're Sherpas for professional climbers who want to get to these big peaks. You might want to check out this group over here.
Right.
They're more, so you're not saying we're above you, which is the way it can be taken, whether or not you intend it that way. But you're saying, hey, because I'll get this sometimes where people like, we can't afford your services. We'd love to work with you. We can't afford your services. It's like, do I say too bad? Or do I say, hey, here are some things that you can do as a new company looking to build your brand, some places you can get started. Read these articles, start building up your skills. Maybe will be a good fit for you down the road when you build up your revenue base. But right
Right.
now,
And it's that investment, right? Whether it's time or effort. I completely agree, because there's been some experiences along the way very similar to what you just pointed out, where hey, I want to work with you, but we're not in the same we're not in the same lane right now. But
yep,
that doesn't mean that I can't send you on your way with some really like thought-provoking or you know influential type advice that
yes,
at the end of the day is going to allow you to continue to build out and move in the direction that you're trying to move into from a solutions perspective, while
yep.
at the same time it'll give you time to grow and kind of mature, so that when we do get the opportunity at the next turn to work together, there's a way better fit.
Yeah. And that's where, like, just as a simple example, say, hey, we're putting together, we've got a lot of content on our blog that's specifically designed to, or learning center that's specifically designed to help people who don't have budgets. Go check that out.
Right.
So you can do it where you're still nurturing indirectly that relationship. So you can still, you can promote your own stuff, right? And, and that's one of the philosophies is the content you create should be part of the nurturing process. And for companies that can't afford you, it can be a place for them to still get help. But the idea is, eventually they can become somebody who has the budget and the resources to say, man, this guy has helped me out so much. This Joe McNamara Consulting has been so helpful with the content he's posted on LinkedIn, and he shared some messages with, hey, here's an article or two, and some of it was his own stuff, some of it was other. Now I've got the budget. I've built a relationship following him for the last year. I'm going to go talk to him as one of my 2 or 3 top choices.
Sure.
And that's where we have to realize too, it's not about that short-term sale. It's about, is that ideal? And do we sometimes need that, especially as we're starting out? Yes.
Oh, of
but
course.
The idea is, the 2 things I always tell my clients is the best sales team in the world is a satisfied client who will brag about you. And the best customer is a repeat customer. You have relationships. So if I can keep getting customers to repeat, that's a lot easier. So take care of them, and then they're going to want to continue to do work with you. So, that's the idea too, of what your brand should highlight is, you're there for the long run with people, you're helping them out. And the key is I'm not selling you, I'm helping you. And that leads to the sales.
Yeah, mutual success. Absolutely. And you kind of stole the response. I wanted to kind of finish up and ask you, like, what's the one major hitting point? I think you did that, but I do want to open the floor to you and kind of give you the last word in terms of, overall, when you think about, where success lies for brands and what it means from an audience interaction and just overall success. If somebody said you can only tell us one thing, what would it be?
Think like your customer. Speak to your customers in ways that are helpful, not salesy, and be that resource. And I will guarantee you, I've got case study after case study after case study where it results in sales, literally in the millions of dollars in many cases. So it's the golden rule. That's really what it comes down to. Take care of people the way you want to be taken care of. Unfortunately, that's a rarity in the world today. And I think that is a phenomenal way to make sure that you are going to position yourself in a way for long-term success in any marketplace that's out there.
Absolutely. I'm really glad that I asked that because it was a really nice way to kind of round out the session. So Don, with the final comments here, tell people, where they can find you. Again, I thank you so much for sitting down and taking the time to do this. But I'm sure that there's at least somebody that's going to watch this video and go, I want to work with that Don guy. So tell them where to go, tell them how they can get a hold of you. And hopefully, maybe there might be, instead of like a referral fee, I'll just donate to the Don Fund.
So check me out. Number 3RhinoMedia.com. The great way to get in contact with me is on LinkedIn. And it is Don Stanley, Stanley, 1294. There's a little story behind that I'll leave for another time. But Don Stanley, 1294. You can hit me up there.
And he'll tell you the story. If you hit him up and you ask
if
him,
you want to know the story, I will tell you the story.
Awesome. Well, Don, again, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. I think there was some excellent, very powerful insights when it comes to how to position a brand, how to grow an audience, and certainly how to keep them happy in the long run, while staying true to who you are, both as an organization and as an individual. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Now I'm Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.